Roll call, please.
Mayor Grant,
Here.
Eric Polish, Lance Poppy.
Here.
Mike Bosco John.
Here.
John Split.
Here.
We are good.
All right, is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I'll make the motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's approved. Motion, is there a motion to approve the minutes from March 16th meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the March 16th meeting.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those are approved. All right, zoning code review of the residential zoning districts, PUD, and tourist rooming houses.
All right, so I provided you guys a copy in email, and then also there's copies here. So we had met in March and to review this for a first time, just to take a step back for the new member on the commission. The city has been working on looking at zoning code changes, mostly to promote development and to address existing concerns within the zoning code that prohibit certain things and make it harder for people to use their properties. For example, in some of our more historic neighborhoods, we have a modern code that we're applying to historic properties that then in turn you can't rebuild or maintain that character. For example, we only allow in the current zoning code a 30% lot coverage. Well, most homes in the historic district have near or above that. So, that's just an example. Ultimately, we have partnered with the Congress for New Urbanism and the League of Wisconsin Municipalities to create a user guide for neighborhood affordability and zoning code reform. So we were a case study community. And the result of that study produced some recommendations to changes in the zoning code. So we did review this once. I did a whole presentation. You may have hopefully maybe watched the video. But this is sort of the second review. If everything goes well tonight or with changes, we'd like to schedule a public hearing for next month. And then hold that public hearing with the Plan Commission and make a recommendation to the Common Council. So this is kind of it's a big undertaking from the standpoint of we haven't really reviewed our residential zoning code for a while. There's a lot of pages here, and I think what we can do is just sort of go through the major changes since the last time we discussed everything. Just to start, so just that's kind of I think the best way to handle this. Nothing has changed in R1 district, so those that was previously reviewed did not change. The highlights there are some of the setbacks and lot coverage going to 40%, and then also allowing conversion duplexes in a residential district. You move on to then R2. R2 residential, this is sort of called two-family residential. We are looking at adding two-family dwellings, conversion duplexes and new construction, and then as well as 3 or 4 unit dwellings via conditional use. So that is a departure from previous code, which would only allow up to a two-family. The other thing we did add is under area regulations, section D, 0 side yard setback. So basically a 0 side yard setback may be permitted by the Plan Commission via conditional use permit for new construction, two-family duplexes, and 3 or 4 unit dwellings. The idea being there twin homes and splitting lots with a 0 lot line. So instead of having to condo out a situation, you could literally build, say, a duplex with a 4-inch separating wall and redivide that into 2 separate lots and then sell them separately. And we have had interest in doing that in the community. And so basically, in a R2 district, that would be allowed, that would then spill over into R3 as well. And that was sort of a request as well from Sue Leahy, the building inspector, because we could get there via a variance or something, or even planned unit development, but allowing it via conditional use, I think, is just sort of an option for people, if they would so choose to build that type of development.
I have a question. If somebody was gonna build 2 of those 2 units, you know, with the 4 inches in between, you know, separate, does the regulation go back to the standard setback for the next unit?
Yeah, so.
You can't go right
It
to
won't be,
lot
yeah,
line.
it wouldn't be, unless it's like a 4 unit, you know?
Right, if
You know,
it's connected, it's
Yeah,
connected,
it's
but
connected, but-
if you're on one lot
Yep,
and you're together as 2, you still need a setback, side yard setback for the next one.
that is true, and I think that's the intention of it.
Okay.
And we can clarify that in the ordinance, that it has to be the shared wall, or the shared.
Yeah, okay.
The shared on, you know, but.
Right, because you don't wanna start going that everybody's so close, like.
And I think frankly, like, it'll come via conditional use, so,
Yeah,
you
it'd have
know,
to be.
I mean, I think we can sort of handle it,
Okay,
but, I get it.
But the side yard setback's only 6 feet.
Yeah,
right.
so,
Okay, so we're looking at 2016 now, or is that where we are?
2016-03D.
Okay, and so where do I see that this is conditionally used?
0 side yard setback, a 0 side yard setback may be permitted
Okay,
by
by-
planning
as a
commission with
conditional.
conditional use permit.
Okay, so it's spelled out directly in that subsection.
Yes.
So if you don't get a conditional use, then the side yard must be at least 6 feet.
Yes.
Got it.
And that's a very unique circumstance. But
Okay.
as some of us know, the twin home idea, or the whole concept of that is
And
a little more popular.
Back to R1?
Yes.
What did we add or change in there?
Really nothing from the last conversation, other than conversion duplex were an allowable use. And then accessory dwelling units are also allowed via conditional use. So accessory dwelling units are, you know, say like a mother-in-law type suite or a second home. And we did change, you know, obviously setbacks and things of that nature through the area regulations. So there's,
Okay.
you know, we had talked a little bit about that, but.
Right, okay, just wanted to
Yep.
make sure we're all moving forward.
I
have one more. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
On the dwelling unit, can that be attached to the principal building, or does it have to be detached from it?
It can be attached.
It can
I
be
believe,
attached,
yeah.
okay.
Letter K in the first use, you know, District 1. Lud would remember the problem we had with, up in the residential neighborhood on Jackson Street when Speed Queen or Alliance put in the parking lot, and then they had to put in a retention. Now, I know, does this cover that in an already established neighborhood, or is it for a new subdivision?
I think it does both. But I think it's, depending on the new subdivision, they'll be required to do that, you know what I
Right.
mean? And
What-
that's sort of, yeah.
I guess what I'm getting at is, I don't like the idea
Yeah.
of that retention pond in a residential
Mhm.
neighborhood.
I understand.
Is there any way that you could
But would
make
storm-
that like a conditional use permit or something that they have to go through some steps?
But wouldn't stormwater management include storm sewers funneling into the network?
Yeah, I mean, it could. I think in that particular situation,
I'm sorry, you probably
you
remember
have-
that too.
Yeah.
because
you
live
have-
up there, Or
My mom's
your
up
mom up there.
in that particular situation, I'm aware of this, you know, the controversy a little bit about it, and, you know, from the standpoint of that, that's a unique one, because you have an industrial facility right in the middle of a residential
Mhm.
district. And certainly, people will be forced to do this via DNR regulations and stormwater regulations.
Mhm.
So having it as an allowable use,
Just covers you from the argument that, gee, don't put that there because I wanted to buy that lot, is
Mhm.
more often going to be the case
Yeah,
than an existing residential neighborhood getting a stormwater retention pond placed in the middle of it.
mhm.
That certainly would be a highly unusual circumstances in Ripon. I don't know if you can find one really.
Yeah. Could,
I mean, this is.
I mean, I understand the
Yeah.
whole, you know, politics behind all that and everything with, I mean, Alliance is a great, you know, employer. But could we put some, like you have to have an aerator in it, or, you know, something so it just doesn't become a muddied up.
And I think that's
Cattail
gonna
farm.
come to the plan commission.
Okay.
That will come to the plan commission, because stormwater management.
If it would
plans
happen again.
Come
yeah.
here, and you could require that
Okay.
as part of their stormwater management plan.
Mhm.
Say, we like your plan, except we want an aerator to make sure we don't have stagnant water.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that can be required. And maybe when we look at, that's another section, to look at stormwater management plans that must come before you, we could add it in that language.
Okay.
I think this is just acknowledging that it's possible
Okay.
that a stormwater retention facility could be required in a new subdivision,
Yeah.
and we're gonna allow it, and because we have to.
because if
Because
we
we have
don't,
to.
they can't
Yeah,
build the
you can't build the
subdivision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. My concern was, you know, the established residential.
Residential area.
Yeah,
And, yeah, and so then as to how you put that unit in, or that management plan together, we can look at that as
Okay.
well.
and frankly,
It's a good footnote.
yeah, it is, and like, it's gonna only come up when there's an incompatible use in the residential existing residential districts. It's only gonna come up when somebody has a commercial or industrial use in that area, which we tend to have those areas outside of that or that area, so,
And existing.
yeah, and existing, you know, so.
And with things like the suggestion of an aerator or design aspects of the retention pond, that would be in the building code.
Right,
What's
we would
required.
need to look at storm water management ordinance
Yeah,
and see if we can add,
Okay.
it's probably a great idea to make sure that we can require it
Yeah.
as part of the.
If we feel that we should.
Yeah, if it's necessary, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's already fencing requirements around
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
bet, yeah, there probably is,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
So it'd certainly be wise to look at that.
But we can look at that and bring it back.
so, yeah, so in R2, similar to R1, we just bumped it up to 3-4 unit dwelling LUD that, you know, with new construction as conditional use.
Okay?
And the zero setback, most everything else sort of mirrors R1. R3 is going to be, I did change the language in 20.20.010 C, so B is multiple family dwellings of 8 units or less will be allowed, multiple family dwellings over 8 units as a conditional use. So just clarifying that you can do 8 or less, but anything over 8 is a conditional use. So that changes a little bit as well, because everything that would be considered more of a multifamily apartment dwelling would have been a conditional use. So this just opens up some flexibility to, on an R3 lot, build up to 8 units without a conditional use.
Just for a point of reference, the new apartment buildings coming into Oshkosh at whole new complex, those are 8-unit buildings, correct?
I have no, I haven't
Yeah,
looked that
they
close,
should be,
but
though,
they're-
on the left-hand side on
I'm estimating
44.
that on the number of,
Yeah, that
condo
should be
meters
an
on the outside.
8-unit, yeah, that should be 8 units,
That's a pretty big building.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and really the idea there is, and some of this is to not put a lot of barriers in the way for development or building, because it's already cost prohibitive enough right now, so. So, the rest of it is pretty, didn't change much in R3, there's some setback things and, we talked about, and then, all of that. Next would be planned unit development. The only thing that changed in the entire PUD ordinance was the acreage, so it was set at 5, and it dropped down to 2. So, you could do a planned unit development with 2 acres, which, is just more or less pick your own zoning type, so in a case like if you wanted to do, development on a couple acres, where there's a couple duplexes and an apartment in the middle or something, you could sort of use planned unit development. And being that there's only, is 5 acres or more, bumping it down to 2 acres just provides a little bit more flexibility. So that's the idea there. Tourist rooming houses would be the next ordinance. So this would be taking a step back a little bit and looking at what are considered, Airbnbs, VRBOs, HomeAways type. And the whole concept here, and we'll get into this a little bit more with the definitions, but we had talked about this at the last meeting briefly. So like bed and breakfasts, are sort of more of a traditional, in a residential neighborhood, person living there, sign up front, saying, the Horner House Bed and Breakfast, or whatever, or whatever you want, and living there and cooking you breakfast in the morning and then on your way, here's the key, whatever. And then we've had, obviously Airbnbs. Since I've been here, I've had multiple calls of people, in residential districts wanting to buy a house and turn it into solely an Airbnb, or use it, as a place to come say, visit their college student son or daughter, and then Airbnb it the rest of the time. On top of then tracking room tax receipts, which are difficult to monitor because we just get money from a third party middle person from Airbnb and VRBO. So this would sort of be in addition to the zoning code to permit tourist rooming homes in R1, R2, R3, B1, B2, and B3. There would need to be the licensing through, I have to add Vernon County, Fond du Lac County. Because I think you said Fond du Lac County, right, last time?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I think an operator must hold following a non-expired license from Wisconsin DAT cap, or Fond du Lac County. So I'll make that change but I think they're sort of the same, because I think you need the DAT cap one to get a Fond du Lac County license. I think you can.
No, we only have Fond du Lac County.
Okay. And then there's this thing in here saying the maximum days in operation, the tourist rooming house may only be rented a total of 180 days in a 365-day period. Okay, now, there's a little bit of I was talking to the mayor earlier today, and there's a little bit of a concern about, so what happens if you're over 180 days? What are you? And so if you move into the definitions part, you can see the definition of bed and breakfast. We thought, so a bed and breakfast shall mean all this, but then a tourist rooming house rented for more than a total of 180 days within a 365-day period shall be regulated as a bed and breakfast. Okay? The thought process there is, treating a more frequently used Airbnb like a bed and breakfast to have to come get a conditional use permit. And the reason being is that is 180 days or more is a bigger possible problem in a residential district to have now an Airbnb use, whether it's, parking, they still have to follow the rules, but somehow differentiating the bigger use or possibly the bigger problem with heavier use. I don't know if that's the best way to do it. Lud?
Okay, so
Yes.
we're looking at dealing with the question of what is a tourist rooming house.
Mm-hmm.
And we have unilaterally or chosen the 180-day because that's what other communities have chosen.
And I think it is under a majority use, okay? So it's anything over 180 days and the 365 day becomes the majority, generally close to the majority of the use
Okay.
of the premises, not just being a single family residential home. Now it is now it's
And that's how we came up with the idea that we would call it, then we'd call it a bed and breakfast, is that?
it would trigger.
This is by default,
it would-
that we looked a place to do it, and then we said, okay, by default, it's a bed and breakfast. I'm just trying to understand
Yeah,
the
we would-
logic.
We would regulate it as a bed and breakfast, so you need the conditional use permit. You would have to follow all the rules for the bed and
Yeah.
breakfast, but the owner does not have to occupy it with the guests.
But what's the difference? I mean, if you're required as like a Airbnb to have a Fond du Lac County
Mhm.
inspection, then becoming a bed and breakfast, you're still gonna have you're gonna have a stronger inspection.
You'll have about the same inspection.
Well,
Well,
you need like
but
a
the-
certain kitchen,
But you need the
commercial
kitchen
kitchen.
thing, that would be the
yeah.
only difference. What we're trying to say too is that we're not regulating, how do I put this? We're regulating the use, right? Not, let me think about this.
Well,
Yeah, it's a little bit of
It's-
a little bit of a slippery slope. I don't think you can define it as a bed and breakfast, because the language in the bed and breakfast doesn't work.
No, and the language of it,
Because it says in your bed and breakfast definition,
yeah.
is occupied by the owner at the time of rental.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but that's why we're not defining it as a bed and breakfast, we're just regulating it as one.
Right, but that's like
But-
calling a dog a cat, and we're gonna regulate the dog differently than we regulate.
And we
cats.
can,
The other-
yeah.
So I think we gotta find a better place to
The
put
oth-
it. I
other
mean, I
op-
understand the dilemma, and I understand where you're going for the conditional use.
The other option I came up with
Yep.
for this dilemma
Yep,
is having a two-part tourist rooming house ordinance, one for part-time and one for full-time.
right, so what are you
With the
gonna do
home.
differently? That's a better solution.
the basic
I don't
difference-
think a solution is to call it a bed breakfast, when it's not.
The basic difference there would be we're requiring the conditional use at the 181st day. So you can rent it out 180 days, but that next, if
Yeah.
you go for 181,
Yeah.
you need the conditional use.
Right, and that should be,
Mhm.
Intention.
right, that
So
should
we
be
can add it
intentional.
to
Yeah, and I
the
think that-
tourist rooming
I think
house
you
of
do.
saying,
I think you do, that the definition is there, and if you attempt to be on, well, Airbnb or VROB or whatever it is that people use, and
I think-
those are in the definitions.
ultimately,
Tourist
what,
rooming house, let's look at the
ultimately,
definition.
ultimately, I think sort of the slippery slope on like a bed and breakfast is, you kind of know what a bed and breakfast is.
Right, somebody's
And-
there
and it's a
giving you
business, and it's this, what we're trying to avoid ultimately, in my mind, is people just buying houses and flipping that, single-family homes and turning them into full-time Airbnbs. You
Right.
know, I know I'm just saying,
Yeah.
from the standpoint of, you know, you have a conditional use to do that.
Yeah.
So that's the standard we're trying to set across the board, for the people that are gonna use these, not for their primary residence. Because if you're under 180 days, generally, you're living there and then you're leaving for, you know, EAA weekend and renting out your house, or you're doing something like that. Anything more than 180 days, you are likely not living there. It's a ghost home that just gets rented out on the weekends, and it's not a bed and breakfast.
So I do have two questions with the operating requirements. First one is the minimum rental period of 2 days. You have an Airbnb, is it common to have someone renting for 1 day?
No,
No.
I
So what
think
happens?
you can.
What would
if you
happen
want,
if someone did wanna rent
Yeah.
for 1 day? Are we gonna disallow that?
I think 2 days means like, you come in today and you leave tomorrow. So it's.
Well, it would be one night.
One overnight.
One
Or
night.
one overnight.
What
Yeah.
we're
It falls
avoiding
on
is,
2 days.
what we're avoiding is like,
The
you know,
hourly rental,
I'm gonna
yeah.
go to John's for a quick nap.
Yeah.
You know?
So it has to fall on 2 calendar days, it doesn't have to be 2
Yeah.
nights.
Yeah,
And the other question I had was on E, requiring 1 parking spot for every 2 guests. I would recommend changing it to every 2 adult guests, because if it's a family of 4, they probably only have the 1 car.
and that's fine, yeah.
Who's gonna police this?
We will police it just like we do like, and run it like with our hotel motel permits. That would be the, so.
But say, you know, I'll just say it, you know, I have hours, and
Mm-hmm.
if I go 195 or 200 nights of rentals, do I have to turn myself in and say, no, I'm a,
So I think
You know what
through-
I'm saying.
Through just the registration process, I think, you know, we'll learn more and more about this, who's gonna police it. Part of this is, it currently isn't policed at all, so we don't know the problem. Once we have people getting licensed and we can, you know, become in contact with them, you know, and giving them the information, we would hope part of it is self-policing, you know? Part of it then is also just on the permit, you know, asking how many days are you gonna be renting this thing? And if they lie, they lie. I mean,
And we are asking them to keep records, or requiring them to keep
Yep.
records. We could, I suppose, at any point in the year, at the end of the
we
year.
can
say,
audit it if we
Yeah,
suspect
that's-
that it's
yeah, right.
heavily used, you know,
Yeah,
What record do they have to keep?
Each
Right,
operator
each-
shall keep a list of names of all persons staying at the tourist rooming house.
yeah. And I know for a fact on Airbnb, just being on that, I mean, they give you, I can get a whole list of the people, where they're from, everything, the number, I got, you know, nights booked, nights unbooked, occupancy rate, I mean, everything. So
And-
you can get that information real easy.
the other thing that will trigger it is our room tax payments. If we see a significant spike in
Yeah.
something from our middle, you know, person who submits, we can begin to better understand maybe where it's coming from, so.
The thing I could see, and I'm always thinking of the opposite side,
Yeah,
say somebody gets 200 days and he doesn't wanna go through this hassle, so you just drop out of Airbnb and you just have a website, or you just get repeat customers and you just collect the money yourself and you don't even pay the room tax.
which then would be a bigger problem,
Right.
We
But
would
I can
go-
see somebody,
cause then they're not paying the tax, and that's not good.
right. But somebody might try to do that and say,
Yeah.
well, I'm not on Airbnb anymore, so I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
So under records, you'd want to add, each operator shall keep a list of names of all persons staying at the tourist rooming house. This list shall be filed annually with the city and available for inspection shall be filed with the city and available at all times for inspection, so that you're getting accountability. So you can keep track of the 180 days, because
Well, if
the
you have-
record should
yeah.
reflect how many days somebody was in your house.
So then at the end of the year, you're gonna need like that paper then,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
with the list of all the
Yeah.
names and,
yeah, and you gotta turn it in. So you gotta turn, if you don't turn it in, it's meaningless.
right?
You try to track for the 180 days,
Yeah.
so that then you know you got a problem, and then if they are violating, they show you a list of 320 days that they rented out, they are self-admitting.
And then they need
Yeah.
to get a conditional use,
They need to get a
or they need
conditional-
to.
Then you
Yeah.
will then not issue them a license the
Mhm.
following year because they have violated the
Yeah.
spirit of the ordinance. So you gotta have it to be able to say that to them, and we don't have to get in the woods in terms of what that means to us, but that we will suggest you can't get a license if you have violated
Mhm.
the terms of the ordinance.
Are
If
you
you
gonna-
don't get a license, you can't operate
Right.
in the city of Ripon. You need a license. So, I mean, if you want to get really deep in the woods, you spell it out. And you will not be able to obtain a license if you have violated any of these terms, but I don't know if other cities have gone that far.
Not necessarily, I think it's hard enough to even
Find it out,
find,
yeah. So
You
they're
know.
not so much worried
Yeah.
about revoking your license privilege or
because some
suspending
people
your
do
right
it
to-
on and off very sporadically, and, unless I'm checking every day, or
Yeah.
we have somebody checking every day, it's just.
So then, so we get this room tax money, we still can't identify where, the source of it.
We cannot,
Okay, so can we not, if we hand them a license, say, and annually, they would submit a record of their room tax?
which they could,
Okay, so I would
So
think you would
either-
add that.
So,
either or, I think,
Yeah.
either or. It's either you ask the list of people, or you file the room tax, so you should be able to know how many times people
I would
stay.
suggest
Yeah.
on the records report
Yeah.
that we generate a form for them,
Mhm.
and on that we include the names of guests and the amount they paid for each night.
Mhm.
That way
And
we
we'll
can,
know what they owed in room tax.
that way we can validate the room tax.
It'll say that on there, on Airbnb, it'll say number of nights
Yep.
rented.
Good. Yep, so then I agree with the mayor creating, say, here's your form,
Mhm.
and you need to file this annually, or next year you don't get it, because you didn't file your form. That you shall be required
Mhm.
to file the form annually. Right, that's a good suggestion. So an annual filing of a form, which gives you an identity of who and how much, and we don't know, we know we got this anonymous dollar, and we can't tie it back to them unless they tell us. Will this tell us?
I bet it won't, not everything,
Not
because
every-
you're gonna get EAA and they're just gonna do it for that week,
Yeah.
and you're gonna get a
But the ones
check.
that have a license,
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
the ones that have taken out a
We
license.
should be able to mathematically go back
And say-
and say, yes, this amount of room tax lines up to these permits.
And that's paid by this third party,
Yes,
not the homeowner.
not the homeowner.
Correct.
And the third party will not release any
Any record
information,
of
nor
that.
will Airbnb or VRBO.
Okay, so you can't get it from them,
but you can get it from the homeowner.
they can get it from the homeowner.
Yeah.
So why would the form not include room tax paid in 2022?
We can do that.
Beautiful.
We can ask that, just like a hotel motel.
Yeah. So then if our revenues don't add up to how much they
Then
say
we're
they-
missing somebody.
We're missing somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're missing, okay, good. All right, that's good. That's good. So that form is a great suggestion by the
And
mayor.
the thing I don't understand is when I signed up for Airbnb, they never asked what Ripon's room tax was.
Yeah.
No,
So,
but what-
They should know it.
What
Well,
happened,
I know.
You know,
They
they
should.
should know it,
Yeah.
but they never,
what happened was, and this is Airbnb and VRBO and all this, were not collecting room tax to begin with. They were doing it under the radar, and then the state law changed and said you have to report. So instead of doing it themselves, they hired a third party.
Oh.
And all of a sudden, that third party did all the research, got all the room
Okay.
taxes, contacted all the jurisdictions and said, yep, we're gonna tack on the tax and then we're gonna pay it on your behalf, because the state wasn't going to allow Airbnb and VRBO to operate in the state without collecting room
Yeah.
tax, because it was such a mess.
Well, the State Department of Revenue has a database for every city tax, county tax.
But they call you, and then you call them, you know, the middleman company, and they're like, yeah, we know your tax, and we do this all on behalf, and just trust that it's right.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good cleanup on the tourist room houses, that we have a way of saying to someone, obviously your records show that you had more than 180 days, then we're not gonna issue a license, because you violated the spirit of the law. Your house will not be properly licensed,
And then do we add in
penalties.
operating requirements, you know, a line about if it's rented over 180 days, they shall need a conditional use permit?
Yes, they probably would put it in there, that if it's determined that your property has been
Yeah.
rented out, you
I
will
would-
be required
I would just alter.
to continue
item-
to operate.
Alter item B, just say, just to put the split right in B. If operating, 180 days or less,
Mhm.
you just need the license. If operating 181 days or more, you need the license and conditional use.
Does it say anywhere that we should turn in that Fond du Lac County or that Department of Ag to the city?
So it says.
Or you just trust
They
us,
will
or-
hold a non-expired, yes, so we can request that on the permit form, they
Yeah,
supply
I
that
got
with
it.
them.
Okay.
Sure, yeah, attachment,
Yeah.
attached.
So they should get that before.
So
they
the
apply for
license,
permit.
the license form should check
And,
out.
and
the-
frankly, we can probably work with Fond du Lac County to get a list of everybody who has this, because Airbnb, I don't think, or Airbnb does not allow you to operate without the proper permitting. They make sure you have at least the DAT cap thing done, or the Fond du Lac County.
They
one.
probably, when we started, we went 2 years without
Anything.
anything, and all of a sudden Fond du Lac County called us and said, you gotta do an inspection.
Mhm.
So maybe Airbnb changed that, but they allowed it without it, or they didn't ask for it.
And ultimately, this is more or less trying to regulate the use in certain districts.
Yes.
Because of,
The county is regulating the quality and safety aspect. We're
Yes.
just regulating the actual use.
in a time where houses are needed for family,
Quit doing it.
right? Selling all of them for Airbnbs does not help the school district.
And then in the definitions, we'll have to,
We'll clean that up.
And the tourist rooming house definition.
Yeah, we'll clean that up. We'll just keep it more simple.
Yeah.
The change, we're just supporting accessory building, an accessory dwelling unit, bed and breakfast was added. And planned unit development was just changed to at least, to put at least 2 acres instead of 5. And then tourist rooming house was added. Other than that, everything else has stayed pretty much the same. So, we can clean rooming house and
So somebody went through our definitions,
Yes,
this,
yep.
these people,
Ayers did, yes,
they did.
yes.
They looked through this and said, okay, these definitions
Need to be added based on the changes.
added,
we have made.
and the ones that are existing are fine.
Fine, yes.
And they compared it against what's in the ordinance.
Yep.
And what's not in the ordinance. Okay.
Unless you wanna do that.
No, no, that's exactly why I'm asking. But if I read through this, I don't want somebody saying, oh, you completely missed that, you completely missed that. Somebody actually
We-
looked at it against what's in the ordinance.
They did,
Okay.
and I will read through it again and make sure we're not missing something. Because we technically didn't even have bed and breakfast before.
Right, right.
And we were treating bed and breakfasts as boarding houses.
So we broke it off of that.
We broke it off of boarding house, but
So one thing I don't see in here, I don't even know if it exists in this country. In other countries, it's called houses of multiple occupancies. So it's basically a fairly large house with, say, 5, 6 bedrooms that are rented out one room at a time. So mostly cottages, is a typical application. I mean, it would be a standard month-to-month or year lease, but you're just leasing the bedroom. Do we have anything in the code that applies to that?
it'd be a boarding house, so a
That's what it's called,
structure
a
other
boarding
than a
house.
hotel, motel, or restaurants where meals or lodging and meals are served for compensation. The structure shall have no more than 10 boarders.
Okay, that does fall under that.
So that's kind of, and I believe there is technically one boarding house in the city that does like short-term room rentals.
Is that one of the ones that used to be a motel?
I don't think so, I think it's a greenhouse on,
Or eastbound one?
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Which one that is?
I do not know if they have a conditional use permit.
Well, I was gonna ask, somebody should look into, fire,
Yeah.
smoke alarms and.
Would grandfathering apply to that situation?
Generally, at this point, probably.
Yeah.
You know, some things are obviously grandfathered in, but, some things will have to get permitted with these changes.
Yeah, that's one to look into though, is, yeah.
Could the
There's more
fire
than
chief
10?
go into that and,
Sure.
look, I
I'm
mean,
sure
you
yeah.
can't, like in a home, but you could, if it's a
Yeah,
commercial.
If there's, yeah, absolutely, it's commercial at that point.
Yeah,
Clearly commercial if there's 10 rooms or 10 separate boarders that are paying money.
I don't know how many
Yeah, I don't
are there
think
though.
so.
Okay,
Yeah.
5
Might
or
be
whatever it is.
Only a few.
Yeah,
yeah,
if they're
not a big
separately,
house.
if they're separately paying rent to someone, then it becomes a boarding house.
mhm.
And I guess the only thing with the boarding house definition is you've got in here meals, they may not be provided. And for meals, yeah,
Compensation.
Yeah.
Or serve for compensation.
And which?
That would mean somebody would cook it for them and
Mhm.
they would pay.
Which,
so maybe you need to expand the definition of boarding house to fit that category.
Which we could.
Yeah, because in this place you're suggesting they're not serving them meals probably.
Right, yeah.
I don't know. Maybe.
I'm gonna guess that.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna guess that. And that would be it.
Probably a few hot plates and microwaves.
Yeah. Right, but they're not serving.
Who knows? I don't know. I don't.
I mean, yeah, I think it's important to identify, otherwise the boarding house definition doesn't fit what the mayor brought up,
Yeah.
because it's talking about serving meals. And there may be places that rent out rooms, just the room,
Mhm.
and make people pay every day for their room. Like a motel or hotel, but it's a house. So now it's a boarding house.
Do they,
Yeah.
do they fall under room tax?
No, I don't think so from the standpoint of they are sort of,
the application I'm thinking is typically a month-to-month lease.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of
It's a
them might
lease.
go week to week,
Yeah.
but
and in this
Okay.
case, I think it's month to month.
Yeah,
And so it's more of a rental or lease
Mhm.
rather than a tourist or short-term rental from a transient person. This is somebody that needs more
Yeah.
permanent housing. So maybe we just remove meals.
Yeah. Yeah, that have, I mean, in other words, give them a definition. But I think John's point's well taken, getting somebody in there to make sure that it's a safe
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
scenario. It's commercial, they're commercializing a house. Boarding house,
But it shouldn't be treated any differently than
Yeah.
a rental.
well,
No, I
that's
think
what
of
I'm
it
getting
that
at.
way, but-
That's what I'm getting at, is that
I understand the
But rentals
conditional
are
use
regulated.
because,
rentals are regulated,
right, but I understand different than a standard rental.
right, because it's just a
But
room.
as far as what we do for regulating whether they can sell food or whatever, I think that's beyond the purview of the allow them to rent month to month by the room.
If they call themselves a boarding house.
Correct.
Right, so that it's to suggest that as soon as you do that with your house, just a regular house anymore.
It would be,
Yeah.
And whether I serve you a meal or not, I have now taken myself out of being just a house.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
something else, and that's, yeah, so
I
I
would
think
be
we expand the
interested-
definition of boarding house. I'm just questioning, do they fall in a different category, just like
Right.
John is?
Yeah.
Are they now really
and I suppose it
a
could
different
be
category? Are they?
could be a separation.
Are they a
House.
tourist? Right, are they a multi-family house?
Yes.
Right, there you go. Or are they a tourist
Rooming house.
rooming house? Yeah, tourist rooming house.
I mean, I suppose if they are serving food, then they should be regulated more heavily by the county because they have the health department.
Right. I don't think they're serving food.
But
I'm gonna jump to that
typically
conclusion.
those,
Yeah.
the ones I'm thinking of, it's a shared kitchen, but everyone kind
Yeah,
of cooks.
gets to
for
use
themselves.
it, but they're not serving it.
I would be
Yeah.
interested to hear from Sue on if there's specific building codes for boarding houses.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I know, like in other countries, they require over like 3 bedrooms, you need sprinklers, you need fire
Yeah,
alarms.
Yeah, there you go.
all of
And,
that.
and then we're getting into multifamily.
Yeah.
And that's really,
Yeah,
you know,
so there shouldn't be too many of these, is what we're concluding.
Right.
There should not be too many boarding houses in Ripon, but there may be. And if there are,
They do,
They say that's a need, it's
No,
been that
and-
way for years.
and that
I mean,
one
a
could
long
be
time.
more or less a duplex, or I don't know how many people are actually
Yeah.
in there, I don't know.
there's
That's
at
when,
least 6 slots on the mailbox up front.
yeah,
Might be 8.
but it's renting by, yeah, I mean,
yeah,
it gets kind of hairy, so
It
we
gets
gotta
a
figure
little-
that out.
it gets a little
'cause we
tricky.
don't wanna turn somebody's 1,500 square foot into a 10 unit.
But like I said, it'd be nice to hear from Sue whether, what the actual
that's
building
why the
codes are.
definition's gotta encompass them.
But if the
And it's a
building,
conditional use, you can't have one unless you have a conditional use.
Yeah,
Right.
Correct?
yeah.
Okay.
and if the building code requires things that puts
Yeah.
us at ease
Yeah.
for safety,
Because we know, yeah.
that would be
Right.
good to know.
And so, yeah, I do think you could point out to someone who's promoting that, because unless they can show that these people have been in there since 1998, maybe the last time we looked at the code, they are now subject to getting a conditional use if they don't have one.
Mhm.
I think you can do that.
Can't.
Can, because they change. They can't, you know, it isn't like they're permanent, have been there since 1998, and been using those same people. The people will have changed. So this idea that they're doing something that clearly was never permitted in any context, I don't think.
I don't
Follow?
think it was unpermitted though either. It just wasn't regulated.
Well,
Yeah,
that's the
I think
point.
it just
and that's the
evolved
point.
into that.
It falls into, it needs to be regulated. Now, whether you force a conditional use, I guess that's kind of where we're at. If they exist, we gotta know it.
But if we're gonna change the definition, now.
Yep.
I would have a hard time making them come get a conditional use.
If they can show that it's a continuous use. That's the key.
Before the definition change.
Well, definitely this way the definition change, but recognizing that what they've been doing
Yeah.
has never been permitted. It was.
The house, I owned a rental across the street, and I bought it in '99, and that was in existence in '99.
There you go.
98.
98.
Yeah, exactly.
A 4-bedroom house and
Yeah.
it's just me, and I wanted to quote unquote rent a room to a friend,
Mhm.
does that bring it into boarding house then? You know, just to bring a friend in,
I
Whether-
don't think that that is the intention of it.
No, that's not the intention.
okay,
It'd be if you hold it out to be not just your friend, but
right,
anybody
okay,
punching in online to say, I have a boarding, I have a
Yeah.
room for rent.
okay.
I have a room
That would be
for
more of
rent.
a sublet, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But if you're still living in the house,
Yeah.
I'm saying,
Yeah.
Right.
and you're renting out a room, that's essentially
It's
the
a
same
roommate.
thing, yeah,
Yeah, you wouldn't talk about it.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Right. And we're not trying to get at chasing people around.
No.
Yeah.
No.
It's just if a structure has 8
Yeah.
mailboxes,
Right,
it should be regulated.
And
Minimally, it should be regulated.
And the regulation of the uses, because of the issues
Yeah,
that could come
yeah.
there, is why we're regulating
Exactly.
it. You know, we don't care if you need a roommate, but
Right,
if there's
right.
people coming renting rooms by the month,
Right. We need to know.
yeah, we need to know,
That's kind of the bottom.
multiple people.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we'll fix that one too, Lud.
Okay.
So if everybody's okay, we'll make some revisions and just do a public hearing and roll with it,
As long as their planning commission's prepared to go there.
unless, yeah. Are you?
He's kind of begging it, ain't he?
Well,
Yeah.
at some point we.
Yeah, you gotta get off the
Yeah.
dime, yeah.
Do we need a motion to
Yep.
bring it?
Direct that those changes be made and that the next planning commission, you're intending at the planning commission level,
Yeah.
that we hold a public hearing. Just to, yeah, I think with a public hearing, you gotta make sure the public's aware of those items that are being discussed. What did they see?
We will have
The
the final
direction
draft.
to them.
Yep, we'll direct it to the website.
Website,
and
where
our
they can
city
find
hall.
this.
Yep.
Okay, very good. That's the motion.
Would anyone like to make that motion?
Did you write that down, Mike?
yeah,
I wasn't listening.
Yeah, you're wearing four
I'll
hats.
second it. but
You're wearing
some-
4 hats today.
I'll make that motion.
Instead of 3.
I'll second the motion.
Discussion on the motion. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? As approved. Any project updates, Adam?
I have
Above water.
Future agenda items? Anybody? Nope.
We may have site plan.
Is there a motion to adjourn?